Texas.
Texas.
Okay.
That's just going to be our open.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best... No. Sorry. I ain't sorry. And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of the Mississippi. Actually, on all sides of the world, man. I'm just expanding our global outreach, man, by episode.
The world doesn't have any sides. I'm on to you.
This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I am the only. I am the undisputed Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the often disputed Matthew James Durzick. And for those of you who don't know what we do here on Hey Listen to This, every week me and Ryan decide to pick an album for whatever reason it may be. Maybe it's a theme, maybe it's an album we like, maybe it's an album that's current, and we find out if we like it or not. And this month, the month of February, we are going to be diving into Black History Month. So, Ryan, I'll have you expand a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so, unlike our current political landscape, we believe in DEI here at Hey, Listen to This. And before we dive into, what artists we're specifically going to cover this week, let's do a little bit of a recap of last week. So
yeah.
What did we talk about last week?
Last week we talked about Stankonia by Outkast, an album that turns 25 this year. Yeah, I know. And we talked about all the big hits off of it, whether it be Miss Jackson or So Fresh So Clean or B.O.B. We dove into that, and we both came away with a very strong appreciation of that album. Definitely one of the better albums in early 2000s hip-hop, really of all time, honestly. And honestly could have probably fit into one of these 4 episodes this month. But alas, we've done that. We are going out of the way, and we will get to the other 25-year-old rap album that I have lined up later on in the year. But yeah, we are diving into another... I wouldn't say rap album per se, but it's definitely got some rap elements. It's definitely got some R&B elements. It's got even some country elements in there. Ryan, what are we talking about this week?
We are going to be talking about Lemonade by Beyoncé, her 6th studio solo release. So, and for those of you who are like, what is a Beyoncé? Come on.
Right.
Do I really have to explain what Beyoncé is at this rate?
Yeah.
But for those of you who are like, Ryan, I just woke up from a coma for 30 years. I don't know what a Beyoncé is. Also, what are podcasts? Let me tell you. So, really quick, Beyoncé got her start as a member of Destiny's Child back in the 90s. She, from that point on, went on an incredible solo run with every album containing fantastic songs. I couldn't find a weak album in her discography. So you get her first album, Dangerously in Love. You get the single Crazy in Love. After that, you get the album B-Day with the song Irreplaceable. And then the album after that is I Am Sasha Fierce. And the song that I chose from there was If I Were a Boy. And then you get the simply titled 4. And from that album, I chose the song Run the World, parentheses, Girls. And then you get the self-titled release, and the song I chose from there was XO. So, hit after hit after hit. She basically was knocking it out of the park. But I kind of noticed a little bit of a theme. She was kind of staying in the lane of being a pop R&B, more of a traditional pop black female superstar. So with Lemonade here, even stepping away from the context of what created Lemonade as an album concept as a whole, you get 12 songs that basically she's allowing herself to bleed onto the page and on the record as a whole, and you get such a wide range of genres that you hinted at. You get like your traditional like R&B. You get your ballads in here. You get country. You get rock in here, and you get like some reggaeton as well. And she collabed with a whole bunch of different artists here that we will dive into. And yeah, like it's when I was thinking about like artists to cover to kick off like Black History Month for our show here. Like it was between this artist and another artist that we will cover one day. Maybe.
We will.
Maybe this month. Hey,
who knows?
But like Beyonce is a pivotal figure that needs to be brought up during these kind of discussions because yeah, Beyonce has had a very successful musical career, but most importantly, she has stood as a figure for Black female empowerment. And then even like outside of like the studio albums that I mentioned, like one thing that I've been taken back as like a fan of music and just art in general, like from Lemonade on, every single album that she's done, it's been very specifically thought out in every single detail. Like to the point that with the album that we're talking about today, we're not going to talk about the visual elements, but like there was a visual movie accompanying Lemonade. So like in that visual album, so to speak, like you get more details that you're not going to catch in a listen of like the audio. But yeah, the only other thing I wanted to say about Lemonade as a whole, if for those of you who don't know what the story of Lemonade is, well, this is Beyonce's "Hey, my husband's cheating on me" record.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it was like this record came out, then Jay-Z came out with his own record, 444. We might talk about that record one day. Who knows? But yeah, and then from there they came out with their own collab record that I've never actually listened to. Have you?
I have not listened to that album. I still have yet to listen to 444, which I need to get on like now. But as far as what you said, I really can't add too much more to what you said about introducing Miss Beyonce Knowles. Again, she did start with Destiny's Child and has had like massive album thereafter. I also feel like I need to revisit that self-titled release from 2013 because I remember not liking it as much. Maybe with fresher ears and more maturity, I might be able to go into that with a more ideological praise of it, or maybe not, or at least a better appreciation of it than I had. But yeah, no, my understanding of Beyonce again. I was a big fan of Destiny's Child back in the day with songs like "Say My Name." Jumpin' Jumpin' was a later hit of theirs. Even Bootylicious to a degree. And then when she came out on her own with, Crazy in Love, I was like, okay, well, this is just the thing now. And after that, it was just, again, she just became this titanic superstar, even though she only has, I was surprised to think, well, what you said about Lemonade only being her sixth release. Because her first release, Dangerously in Love, was back in 2003. So that's 6 albums over the course of 13 years. I mean, that's the kind of stuff, like, you compare Rihanna, who at one point was releasing an album almost every year, and not to knock, Riri down anyway, but Beyonce, I would say, is probably the biggest female R&B star of the 21st century.
That's a fair statement to make, man. Like, I would say they're easily like 1 and 2. Nicki Minaj fans, don't come at us. I mean, yeah. all respect to what she's done for the female rap game, but I digress. You're not gonna step up to Beyonce and Rihanna. Let's face it.
Absolutely
not. So like before we pivot on over to the discussion of the album, like I will just say my personal relationship with Beyonce. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've been a hater for much of my life of Beyonce, and it wasn't until even when the 2013 self-titled release came out, I was just like, oh look, Beyonce released an album and it broke the internet. You know how I was in college. I was pretty much a hater.
I was too. Trust me, those tapes are sealed and safe.
But it wasn't until I listened to a podcast that I absolutely love. The podcast is called Dissect, and they did seasons on Lemonade and her other album that came up afterward. I think that album is Black is King. Let me just spot check.
That might be the collab album, I think.
Black is King. Yeah, that was the album. Okay, cool. So and for those of you who are not familiar with the music podcast Dissect, what they essentially do is like they have like hour-long episodes and basically go like, moment by moment within a track, and the whole season is an album. And they basically go over the musical implications of what's going on and the lyrical implications. It's basically like, essentially what we do here, but expanded.
Yeah, like older and on crack.
Yeah, pretty much. So, and when I listened to the season that they did on Lemonade, I was actually really blown away by the artistic intention that Beyonce put forth in this record here. And like just the songs that I've heard from that point on, from Lemonade, has actually made me want to go back and get rid of my hater energy. And like eventually I appreciated the 2013 release, and then Cowboy Carter came out. That was a good album. And then I haven't checked out her other like earlier studio works that I mentioned at the start of the show, but maybe one day I'll get curious.
Yeah. I remember listening to that first album a long time ago. I think it was while I was in college, and remember liking at least one song off of it, a couple songs actually. But this one, I want to say I rented this album from the Carnegie Library and have sort of had it ever since. Not had the album itself. I returned to the library, obviously. But, remember listening to them and, like, thinking, whoa, this is something. So, that being said, you want to get into this something called Lemonade?
Yeah. So I'll kick off the discussion of the first track here, and that is Pray You Catch Me. So right away, we get the mindset of Beyonce in this album, and especially with the opening track here, where she has this very paranoid effect about like she can taste the dishonesty on her lover's breath, and like with how spacey everything is and how everything's so stripped back, and it seems extremely personal. Like you can really like that. I really appreciate the way that Beyonce was able to like really sink the listener and myself into, oh hey, this is what's going on. Like I haven't caught my husband in a lie yet, but I know something's going on. And like you get like the refrain of like pray, I'm praying to catch you whispering, I pray you catch me. And like you get like lyrics about like ears against the wall, and like it's a fantastic way to open up the album. Love the line, nothing else seems to hurt like the smile on your face. Like, oh my god, that is such a heartbreaking line. Like I also talk about like you can taste the dishonesty, it's all over your breath. Like that's a really good line. And also like as a whole, like as the track progresses, you get like those rim hits at the like, I think it's like within like the second verse within the production that just add like another texture to it, and the strings as well. Like I'm always a sucker for strings, especially at the end. And yeah, the way the whole track ends off with Beyonce questioning, I'm just gonna say Jay-Z at this point.
Yeah.
What are you doing, my love? Like, and how that pivots over to the next track is fantastic. Not a favorite track off of the record for me. And for the record, I have a top 3 and about nothing. There are some tracks here that I will say that are not my cup of tea, and I'll get like when we get to them, I'll explain it obviously. But Pray You Catch Me, excellent way to open up the album.
Excellent way to open up the album as well. It's not in my top three either, and much like you, I have a top three and a bottom zero. There are a couple tracks which I think are kind of meh, but we'll get to those. I love the way this whole album opens, just very ominously, with Beyonce going, almost kind of like a prog thing almost. And then you get this very smooth ballad that Beyonce presents, but it contrasts so well with, like you mentioned, the very fiercely bitter lyrics. And that one that you mentioned about the smile upon your face just hits home every single time. And she's not shying away from anything out of the gate. Just like, nope, I'm having problems with my relationship and you're going to hear all about them. So, the way it's presented, it's the way the fact that it's so smooth yet so fierce in its lyrics does present like a very haunting ideal of what Beyonce is going for. She's basically saying, it's a very pretty song, but things aren't pretty, and I might, mess somebody up here real soon. So ultimately, a really, really great way to open the album. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. I don't really have any other notes. Love the piano as well. And, one thing that we'll be able to speak on as we get further into the album, it's just interesting that this is such a personal release for Beyonce. You get different kind of emotions, different kind of songs, but they all fit so well.
They do. And I think it's an interesting trick that she pulls where it feels like the majority of the album is focused on one subject, or basically one and a half subjects, which we'll get into, because even those songs that dive into the other part of it does sort of tie in with the main subject of the relationship issues. But yeah, the fact that it's all about the same story, but it's presented in different contexts, musically and sonically, is a very bold and ultimately satisfying way that she goes about it.
So, you ready to pivot over to the next track?
The next track, which is Hold Up. And in this track, it's a little different contextually. It's definitely still in the category of dealing with the relationship issues, but instead of wondering if there's an issue, she's basically confronting it by saying, hold up, they don't love you like I love you. Basically saying, for better or worse, these hoes ain't loyal like me. So this is her saying that to Jay-Z, and the production on this track by Diplo is a lot brighter and more upbeat than Pray You Catch Me. It almost has a very, I want to say like a very street savvy, very almost street island kind of mix going on, where you have the air horns going off at any single random point in time. And it's very good production from Diplo. It's not like my favorite production that I've ever heard on a song ever, but I'm like, I like it. I like it a lot. And Beyonce throughout the entire track sounds very calm, but at the same time very confident in what she's saying. And basically sort of acting as if, hey, I'm going to, continue singing as I am and being the professional that I am, even though, once again, deep down, something's wrong and I'm not going to deal with this. It's sort of bubbling under the surface. The only downside of this track is the outro, which I didn't hate. I think it's all right, but I also thought it was kind of meh, sort of with the weird, I wasn't really a big fan of that. But otherwise, I like this track quite a bit. Not my top three, but it does maintain the narrative and change things up musically, so marks on both of those.
So one thing that I'm gonna maybe kind of challenge your one thing that I'm gonna challenge your interpretation on in terms of Beyonce's delivery here, I almost want to say that within this track here, it's a little bit more frantic because you get almost like a free-form delivery. In last week's episode, I basically was just like, boo, big boy cannot rap within a certain amount of rhythm. Here, Beyonce does a really good job. And also you get lyrics where she's talking about scrolling through your call list. I don't want to lose my pride, but I'm gonna fuck me up a bitch. Also, love that. I love
Right.
saying that. But yeah, like you get more lyrics. And maybe I was focused more in on the lyrical front, but like the lyrical front plus like the freeform kind of delivery kind of made me feel like it was more frantic in nature. So I'm gonna start right off the gate. After saying that, by saying this is my second favorite song on the album.
Ooh, I like. All right.
Yeah. So mainly because like I love the production's really solid. And do you know what this song was a riff on?
No, I don't.
So there's a song by a group called the Yeah Yeah Yeahs called Maps. And
Really?
yeah.
This is a take on that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So like,
Because I'm vaguely familiar with the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, but I never would have suspected in 1,000 years that this would be something from Beyonce interpolating that. But there is one down the line in this album that I did recognize.
So the in Maps by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, the chorus goes, "Wait, they don't love you like I love you."
Ah.
And at the very end, it's another riff on another song, "Turn My Swag On" by Soulja Boy, which I mean,
It's Soulja Boy.
yeah, I'm not nearly as of a huge fan of the riff as compared to the Yeah Yeah Yeahs riff, so that's probably what hooked me a little bit more. Also, you mentioned Diplo had a hand in the production. Ezra Coing, I might be mispronouncing that last name, the lead singer from Vampire Weekend, and also Father John Misty had a hand in writing
Really?
this song here.
Oh, wow.
So
I'm learning things. That's wow. That's a really weird like collaboration of artists for this one particular song.
Yeah.
Vampire Weekend, Father John Misty, Diplo, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs all teaming up for a Beyonce song.
yeah. And like another thing that kind of hooked me on it, other than like the riff on the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, like I mentioned, love the freeform delivery that Beyonce is executing here. The refrain is so solid with Beyonce questioning even herself, like, what's worse, looking jealous or crazy? Looking jealous or crazy? Like she keeps repeating that, and it's just like she's trying to convince herself that. And another thing I liked, second verse was solid, where Beyonce's basically questioning the loyalty of the other women that are around Jay-Z and saying, "Hey, I'm a ride or die with you." Yeah, I have no notes, man. I have no complaints about this song. This is my second favorite song on the album.
Yeah, again, it's not in my top three, but I'm so glad that you were able to find all that stuff out about the collaborations, and that is a theme that may resurface later. The only other note I have about this song is I really like that part of the song where it stops with the regular beat and just sort of claps along, or has that like little like snare going on for like a couple seconds, and Beyonce's just sort of going into this flow and just like, oh, okay, that was nice.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I like this song, so we're 2 for 2 on this album.
So I'm gonna kick off the next track here. "Don't Hurt Yourself." And oh my goodness, man! Like we go from like the previous track to like a collab with Mr. Jacksony White. Like
Jacksony White-Tano.
oh my goodness! Like, are you trying to seduce me with this record here? So fantastic song. Like we go from "Pray You Catch Me," which was like a nice appetizer, to "Hold Up," which was like, okay, now you have my attention, and now we get "Don't Hurt Yourself." I'm like, okay, let's get into bed with each other here with this album. So yeah, I'm not even gonna really talk about the Jack White part coming out of the gate. Beyonce is at her most fierce in this song here. Like with her vocal delivery, like her very first full sentence in her first verse is, "Who the fuck do you think I is? You ain't married to no average bitch, boy." like oh my gosh, I am absolutely in love with her vocal delivery and like just her choice of lyrics here. The guitars and production from Jack White, that's always going to hook me. I'm a Jack White stan. In the chorus, I like how the choice of words, when you hurt me, you hurt yourself, is a gentle reminder to when you hurt your partner in a relationship, you're actually hurting yourself in the long run. And also, I love at the very end where Jack White, oftentimes in his songs, he'll call God a woman, which, okay, cool, edgelord kind of stuff there. But I love how, like, it's almost like a twist on almost calling Beyonce God in a sense. Um, Fan of that. I mean, it's just such a fantastic song, and especially at the end where Beyonce and Jack come in together to collab on the last chorus. Like, it's just so good. Like, do I have to say it?
No, but for the sake of context, if anyone's potentially, they're writing down notes at home, just say it.
This is my favorite track on the album.
It is in my top three as well. I have it at number 3, and for pretty much all the same reasons that you just mentioned. Again, the fact that this is a Jack White song and Beyonce just shoves him out of the way and just takes over immediately with those lyrics. So we were talking about on the last couple songs how Beyonce was sort of smooth and calm and collected, even though there was something bubbling under the surface. Here, it explodes. She's like, no. Who do you think I am? Who do you think I is? And basically just rails off saying, listen, I am the strong one in this relationship. I can jump to any boy I want if I want to. So I have the star power. You're not anything without me. And the fact of the matter is, if you try to cross me one more time, that's it. And she's saying this about Jay-Z. That is insane. And again, the guitar work is fantastic. Honestly, I feel like if the only thing that could have made this slightly better is if Beyonce had sang all of it. Like, it almost feels like Jack White. I mean, and I do agree with Jack White basically sort of staying by her side and adding that context, which I do think is nice. But it feels like, I don't know, Beyonce's such a strong presence on the song, especially at the top, that when Jack White comes in here, I was like, Jack, what are you doing here? This is Beyonce's territory. You just get out of the way of the fire, man. But production-wise, guitar-wise, drum-wise, he sounds fantastic. And yeah, no, this is a great song. I, again, have it at number 3 on this album.
So one thing I'll add to button up the discussion about Don't Hurt Yourself, and I'll bring up this point later on in the review. Maybe the inclusion of Jack White on the vocal front is supposed to, add that male element into the discussion, because, he's not, Jack can sing. He could have came out a little bit more pronounced here, but he's very kind of taken back, toned down compared to Beyonce.
Right, so. Which is not a knock on Jack White, because we're talking about Beyonce here.
Yeah.
Trying to match Beyonce's energy, especially when she's pissed off like this, you're not gonna match that. Because anyone who would try, any other dude, if it was James Hetfield, he'd be trying too hard. If it was someone like Chad Kroeger, he'd be trying too hard. But as funny as that would be, so again, and one other theory I just thought of while you were talking about that is maybe he's trying to play the role of the lover, I guess, that Beyonce could jump upon if times get tough, which, again, fascinating thought in and of itself. But yeah, great song. Are you ready to move on to Sorry?
Yes.
So Sorry is basically the same vibes lyrically as Don't Hurt Yourself. The production and lyrics, though, take a slight step back. Although I will say this song did improve with a second listen. At first I was just kind of I was coming off the high of Don't Hurt Yourself, and it's kind of unfair for this song to try to follow that up. But at the same time, it does have sort of a weird 80s new wave type of vibe with it. And really could be an 80s song if not for the trap beat that's behind it. And ultimately it's basically Beyonce saying, hey, what I just said, I ain't sorry for it. I ain't sorry for who I am. I ain't sorry for standing up for myself. And I ain't sorry for the things I'm about to dish out, which basically, again, is a little vague throughout the first part of the song. where she's just saying, I ain't sorry for who I am. I'm Beyonce, you're not. And then towards the end of the song in the outro, where the sort of 80s synth backs off, and you just get the beat with sort of a sort of half step beat, and we get the origins of Boy Bye and Becky with the good hair. So contextually, we get some very long-standing and noteworthy mentions that have sort of defined this album, sort of the T, if you will, of this album. It is not in my top three. In fact, it probably is in the bottom half of the album for me, but I didn't hate it, so it's not getting any bad moniker or anything. But it sort of more or less keeps up the narrative flow and adds a couple new characters, but it suffers from having to come off of Don't Hurt Yourself, which is tough.
Yeah, I'm pretty much vibing right there with you in terms of like appreciation of the track. Like, I if I were to be completely honest with you, this would probably be a skip for me. Only because it's not my kind of track. It's a necessary track within the landscape of the album because it's Beyonce saying, "Hey, I'm gonna do a trap hip hop song within the context of a female going through a broken heart kind of scenario." Yeah. Which cool. You do you. I'm not a fan of it. Only because half of the song is basically like the equivalent of that Instagram girl showing her middle finger, be like, "I don't need no man, boy, bye,"
Yeah.
like you hinted at. I will say though, there were a couple fun moments for me. There's a moment where the way that she's delivering like a couple of the bars, it almost like it's like a very fluttery kind of vocal delivery. I was a fan of that. Outro is good. And it like you really can kind of get the idea of you can really get the idea of Beyonce just leaving in the middle of the night, or when Jay-Z's not home, and just leaving him a note and just saying, "Hey, you can call Becky with the good hair." That was a good moment, but overall though, it's an okay song. Like, there wasn't a moment where I'm just I get this stuff out of my ears, but still not for me.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of right there with you on that. Like, I don't think, if I were listening to this album front to back, I don't think I would skip it, but at the same time, it would definitely be sort of all right, it does have narrative elements that you need to have in there, but you don't necessarily think it's this is such a great song because it mentions Becky with the good hair. It's fine. It's fine.
So, moving over to 6 inch. And this is another, I would say, this is maybe another expansion artistically of, the previous song, where it's, almost like a trap hip-hop kind of song. But I like this song much better. You get right out of the gate, Beyonce, absolutely empowering herself with, lyrics like 6 inch heels. She walked in the club like nobody's business, and talking about murdered everybody and I was her witness. This almost seems like a quasi kind of stripper anthem, but later on in the track you get lyrics about the person grinding Monday through Friday and working Friday through Sunday. So it's stripper anthem, female empowerment anthem. This is basically in this point of the story, Beyonce's finding her groove and finding her empowerment outside of her current relationship. And hey, look, it's the weekend. And out of all the collabs that happen here, this is the most okay, cool. He provides his verse, but he doesn't do anything to really stand out. And you could have put any other male artist there and would have had the same effect. Other than that, I mean, I really don't have any other notes. I mean, I like the ending of the track where basically you have Beyonce almost begging Jay-Z to come back in a very kind of squeaky kind of tone. And you can really I like that kind of I like that kind of detail within a song because you can tell like she might have been crying and she might have been just screaming her lungs out and like that's all she can muster. It's a good moment. Not my third favorite song, but it's a good song.
Yeah, so I will basically. There's a lot of stuff I agree with you there. First of all, thank you for claiming that this is a stripper anthem because it absolutely 100% is. Don't at either of us. I thought The Weeknd sounded a little better than you did. Like I wasn't blown away by him, but I thought he did pretty good for what it was coming out of the gate. And the opening to this track sounds like it's a movie trailer, like you're about to watch Mission Impossible or some shit. And the way it ends, you mentioned with the voice, I love that because you mentioned this whole song basically being a quasi stripper anthem / female empowerment anthem, and yet there's that little tension of desperation in her voice at the very end, because she's saying, "You always come back to me," with that little bit at the end being like, "Please come back to me," So I thought that was a nice touch. But for the reasons you did not mention, this is my second favorite track on the entire album. And it's for basically the same reason that Hold Up was your second favorite. Because of who's all involved and the little nuggets of information that are involved. So the sample that you may not be aware of on the chorus is Isaac Hayes' Walk On By, which is one of my favorite like R&B tracks like of all time. It's like the original's 12 minutes long by Isaac Hayes, but it just grooves so well. And when I heard this sound for the first time, I caught that. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, this song is going out of its way. Like, Beyoncé did her homework in finding this sample. And granted, there's some drum elements toward the end of the song, Walk On By, I should say, that have been sampled in hip-hop before, and other parts of it that have been sampled. But for Beyoncé to do that in 2016, I don't know, 40-some years after the initial track was released, like, that's impressive. And also, you may not realize the part in the middle where she's talking about grinding from Monday through Friday, Friday through Sunday. Do you know what that is a reference to musically?
No.
It is a reference to the song My Girls by Animal Collective.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So once again, we have The Weeknd, we have Isaac Hayes, covered a song written by Burt Bacharach and Hal David, and also Animal Collective collaborating on a Beyoncé song. She did her homework with this damn album.
Oh man, I love that.
Yeah, I love it too. So that's kind of like I nerded out on that, and her performance, as always, is great. So that's why this is number 2 for me, and easily on a given day it could be number 1.
All right, and I am editing my overall rating of the album since you dropped those nuggets on me. So yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to, dig back into that track there. Excellent work by you, my dude.
Well, honestly, to be honest, I only knew the Isaac Hayes by listening. When I looked it up later and I saw that it was the Animal Collective song, which is my favorite Animal Collective song, by the way, I was like, oh, all right.
All right, so, yeah, you ready to move on to Daddy Lessons?
Daddy Lessons. And this is a track in which Beyonce decides to go country. And now, granted, it's not like full-blown country. Like, this isn't a song you would hear from, like, Toby Keith or, Garth Brooks or anything like that. It's kind of like a weird, like, country swing type of mix. Like, the whole thing sounds like you start with the lone trumpet that starts with the hand claps, which sort of has more of a backwoods gospel feel. And the whole vibe of the track feels like a backyard gospel jam. And you have Beyonce basically waxing poetic about her childhood and how her daddy was sort of this outlaw and how maybe he wasn't the greatest man alive, but he had the toughness and the balls to teach her right from wrong, and basically said, when trouble comes to town, my daddy didn't mess around. He taught me to shoot, and I'm obviously not saying the lyrics correctly there, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, he talks about how he likes whiskey and vinyl, and it's a really, really good song. Her vocals sound great on it. I love the instruments with like the trumpet at the beginning, that sax solo, which I'm sure you're gonna talk about for 5 minutes, and that's completely fine. And it does work well as a country song. Like it legitimately sounds very countryish, sort of a mix of country and gospel, and it also does help. Like I didn't really think about it until just now, but it also does tie in with the album's theme of Beyonce dealing with relationship issues, because basically saying, listen, the way I was raised, my daddy said if there was a man that comes to town causing trouble, you shoot him. So this is basically Beyonce sort of using a wholesome way of saying, if you mess with me, I'm going to shoot you. Which, again, she's saying this to Jay-Z.
Of all people.
Of all people.
Yeah.
So really, this was a tough one to kick out of my top 3, but unfortunately, it's like, if I were doing this 1 through 12, I'd probably put this at number 4. It is so close to being in the top 3. But man, this is a really good track.
I'm right there with, well, maybe not right there with you, but like I do like this track a lot. Like I'll start out with the only criticism I have of the track is the way it starts out, and you get Beyonce being like Texas, Texas. I'm like, okay, we get it. You're trying to do a country song.
She does push that button once too many times, but that's whatever.
Yeah, and I understand that's where she's from, and she's calling back to like her homeland. But like you cut that out. This song is instantly like maybe like 3% better. So I will say though I do so like within the scope of the narrative here, like I do like the inclusion of this song here because it's Beyonce trying to go back to her roots, to go back to like her foundation, to understand who she was and how she was brought up and how she can use that as, I don't want to say leverage, but as a guide to like how to navigate the current climate and current storm she's going through in her love life. And this is one detail that I wasn't able to pick up organically within my listen of this album here, but within this song here, the line, when trouble comes in town and men like me come around, this comes at a part where Beyonce's dad is talking to her, and like he says, when men like me come around, and like equating that to like trouble coming to town. A little bit of backstory there. Beyonce's father actually committed the same kind of sin that Jay-Z committed here. He cheated on Beyonce's mother, and he's equating Jay-Z to like himself there, saying like, hey, they're basically one and the same. So, and like there's also I would have to revisit the season of Dissect when they're talking about this, but like they dive into like generational issues with African Americans and how they tend to be they're just like, I don't know, like there's something with them cheating, and like somehow like some people are programmed that way based on like generational kind of like trauma. So it doesn't have to specifically do with the African American race, but it's more just like some people are just, they see that in their life and they mimic that. So that, I like that little nugget, but I couldn't find that organically within this, at least the audio appreciation here. So that was a cool moment. Barry sax solo.
Yeah.
Always a fan of. Love the chorus. It's really solid. Not my third favorite track, though. So, and I mean, that's kind of evident because of Texas.
I will say Texas is at least better than Tom Ford.
Yeah, true. It is an improvement.
Yes. But no, that is a fascinating take on that. I really would not have considered that. Because, yeah, that it does feel like that would be a... and granted, that's something that does go across all races, is the idea that the way you see something growing up, you may end up dealing with it later in life, or being that later in life. So that's an interesting prospect. But what I find fascinating is that you're saying that Beyonce is saying that her dad is saying that a man like Jay-Z is like him when he was cheating on Beyonce's mother. And so I'm wondering if that actually happened, or if this is Beyonce sort of using her own artistic leverage to assume that, which is fair. You know, it's her album. She can do whatever the hell she wants. But I feel like that's one of those things where maybe her dad wasn't quite as self-reflective as that, and maybe this is just Beyonce sort of painting this fantasy of it. But it still sounds great. It's a great song.
Yeah, yeah. So before we move on to another song in the album here, Matt,
Ryan,
how you doing?
doing good.
All right. So I got a question for you.
What's that?
If the listeners out there are doing good while listening to us and really are appreciating what we're doing here in this review, because I feel like we're doing a really good job in this review. You know, I'm patting myself on the back here. Yeah. What are some ways that they can, help support us in our podcasting adventures?
Again, help us out by following us on social media. We are located on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Blue Sky. We're on YouTube, where we drop our episodes every week in full. So if you're on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. And basically, as always, tell your friends about us. You know, say, hey, I found this podcast about these guys. They're covering everything from Charles Mingus to the Turtles to Taylor Swift. And shoot them a link to one of our past episodes, because we've been covering the gambit for the last almost a year and a half, I want to say at this point, which is nuts. And as always, if you have any ideas for shows or things we can work on, email us directly at ttheylisten@gmail.com. TTHeyListen is our moniker on most of our social media websites, so where you can find links for that. Yeah, is there anything else I'm missing? Threads. We're also on Threads. But
remember Threads?
Remember Threads? It's right up there with Jet. Yeah, so again, thank you for supporting us this far and continuing to support us. And again, tell a friend. And yeah.
Those are excellent ways to help support us, guys. And thank you for everyone who's just been listening to us, talk and wax poetic about albums. It's a good time. So moving on to the back half of the album here, beginning with Love Drought. And yeah, this is an interesting song, because for the first half of the record we get Beyonce basically telling the story of hey, I'm discovering that Jay-Z's cheating. Oh my god, I'm so angry right now. I'm jealous or crazy. I'm going to go be a stripper. And then, I'm going to look into my past to see what's going on. And then you get Love Drought, which is a turn in the momentum here. The song feels a bit dry for me. But I feel like that's on purpose, because at this point in the record, I feel like Beyonce's emotions have run dry. And, the song is called Love Drought. And, at the very end, you get, lyrics about ending this love drought and stuff. It's a dry song on purpose. One thing I did really kind of nerded out about is in the verses. You get in verse 1, you get the lyrics, 10 times out of 9 I know you were lying, but 9 times out of 10 I know you're trying. And then you get in the second verse, 9 times out of 10 I'm in my feelings, but 10 times out of 9 I'm only human. I like that kind of little turn of phrase. That was a little bit of a songwriting nerd moment for me. And yeah, another thing that I liked is in the middle of the track here, you get the lyrics, tell me what did I do wrong? Oh, already asked that, my bad. And I love that kind of organic stream of consciousness. One of my favorite bands of all time, La Dispute, in my favorite record of all time from them, the way that they introduce that record, it's also along that kind of stream of consciousness kind of mentality. So when I caught that, I'm like, oh, hey, that's kind of La Dispute there. There we go. And yeah, and at the end, you get the please, you and me will stop this love drown, and like you get a countless amount of lyrics about like hey, her and Jay Z can move mountains. They can like they can work everything out. I like it as a sentiment. It's a good song. Very much an album track though.
I'm right there with you. It's an album track for me as well, and it is a nice shift. When you were mentioning this being a sort of dry track or a shift for the narrative from what we're dealing with in Daddy Lessons, have you ever been on vacation?
Sometimes.
Okay. So you know how like sometimes, and granted, we haven't like. I don't know if there's ever been a case where either of us have needed to take a vacation to like get our mind off of things. But you know that feeling whenever you come back from vacation, all the pressures that you were dealing with and all the BS that was sort of weighing on you sort of dissipates. It isn't as heavy the second time around.
Yeah.
That's kind of what this track is in a sense. Like it felt like if Daddy Lessons was a vacation to go see the parents back home and talk about issues and sort of get back with yourself, back with your roots. This is the return to home after that, and her basically saying, "Okay, I feel better now. Instead of me trying to tell you who the hell I is, let's just try to make this work out." That being said, I thought the beat was pretty nice. I love the little sort of whistling intro that it had. Beyonce's lyrics are strong. The voice is good. I will say the one knock I have on this track is the chorus, where it was trying to go for the anti-drop effect, but it really wasn't coming down from much to begin with. So I thought that was kind of weak and that it really didn't hit as hard as it wanted to. But aside from that, I agree with you. It's an album track. It's fine.
It was almost like it was an anti-drop.
Yeah. Which realistically would mean a giant chorus that, scorches the earth, but not the case here.
All right. So, yeah, you ready to move on over to Sandcastles? Because I feel like we hit Love Drop pretty well.
I think so, too. We're moving on to Sandcastles, where, this track is another shift back into ballad mode. And that piano at the start, really, really good stuff. Beyonce more or less going full gospel on this track. And the way she sings on this is a lot different. Like we talked about how at the start, she sounded a lot more controlled and very professional almost in her delivery with Pray You Catch Me and Hold Up. And even on songs that are a lot stronger like 6 Inch or Don't Hurt Yourself, she sounded more badass, but not necessarily, any less polished. Here she tries to go for a more raw effect that I think does work very well. Like she's very sort of shooting at the hip vocally and mentally and personally. And I think it works really well. It's not in my top 3, but it's probably in the top half of the album for me. And my only other note about this song is that Adele needs to cover it. Because this is basically an Adele song through Beyonce's prism. So it's good.
I love this song, man. Like it could, like if I had to actually rank it properly, it could be number 4 for me on the record, and it's mainly due to like that Adele effect that you just mentioned. Because like the way that it was recorded, they made a very specific choice to not have her vocals like coded in anything. Like they were like, oh nope, this is gonna be extremely raw. And you can really tell like the passion behind it. Like I just whenever I see that within it, whenever I hear hear that within a track, I'm always a huge fan of, because like at the end of the day, like one of the beautiful things about music is like somebody's ability to express what they're going through. And the way, like I talk about this in like a couple of the other reviews that we've done, it's a way for them to exercise their demons, and fans who love that specific artist, they can exercise their demons through that track. It's a beautiful moment. One thing songwriting wise that I really did like is that like we get 3 verses here, right? You get the first verse talking about like we built sandcastles that washed away. And then like you get the ending of the verse being like every promise don't work out that way. So you get the promise of like a relationship forming, but promises don't work out that way. And then you get in the second verse, which I'm gonna back out from my discussion about like what I'm trying to nail here. I love how passionate in the second verse Beyonce is whenever she's saying, "What is it about you that I can't erase, baby?" Like she's gone through the journey so far of, hey, I'm empowering myself, hey, I'm that bitch boy, and like she's gone through everything, but she can't shake it. You mentioned it in the 6 inch discussion where she's going through this female empowerment, like hey, I'm grinding Monday through Friday, but like deep down, like she still has that itch. But getting back into my overall point about like what I'm trying to nail here with the songwriting aspect, you got the second verse about like her talking about how love is destroyed and like picture scratched out frame, and like the ending of that second verse ends with when every promise don't work out that way. So still kind of expanding upon the promise of love. And then in the third verse you get lyrics like, and I know I promised that I couldn't stay, baby. Every promise don't work out that way. So like kind of turning that whole sentiment on its head, being like, hey, love is ruined, and I promised that I couldn't stay, but promises don't work out that way. That's like I kind of nerded out about that moment.
Yeah, no, it's a great move that she puts there, and again, even if you weren't paying attention to the lyrics, which with this album I don't know how that's even possible, but it just sounds so smooth. And again, even for as raw as she's going here, like she's again not like trying to, hit every note or be Celine Dion or even Alicia Keys. Like she's just basically letting her emotions out, and hopefully it lines up with the notes. Like it's really powerful in that regard. But yeah, no, the lyrics are strong here too. Again, this is probably in the top half of the album for me. Like this is one of those songs like on my first listen to this album in probably about a year, I was just taken aback by like remembering how good it was.
So I'm gonna pivot over to Forward, which is like almost like a conclusion point of Sandcastles. To be honest with you, we get another collab here. James Blake, everybody has entered the chat. So I need to listen to more James Blake. I digress. So only notes I have here is that I like how the inclusion of James Blake's vocals here, and how it's like very like calm, but almost seems like it's kind of damaged in a sense of how like the lyrics that he's spewing out are just talking about like moving forward, and like hey, like this is almost like Jay-Z in a sense in the album, in the narrative of it, being like, hey, I know we've been through a lot, but let's move forward. Okay, let's leave whatever happened in the past and let's just move forward as a couple. A great moment. Too short of a track, and like it's not meant to be a standalone track. If I'm gonna be completely honest with you, for it to be like my third favorite track, and we're actually running out of tracks here soon. So, but yeah. Solid track in its own right. I like how it's a part B to Sandcastles.
Yeah, it serves an interesting purpose as both an epilogue to Sandcastles, but also as a bit of a transition piece to the next song, because it starts with that piano and James Blake going forward, before it sort of changes in this sort of more computerized, funky sort of sound towards the end of the track, which does put us in mode for the next track, which is Freedom.
So, yeah, you ready to talk about some freedom?
I'm ready to talk about some freedom. Okay. So we are going into a forceful shift back into R&B with this song. Right at the start, you get that organ which has a very menacing pulse to it. And the guitar that's in this track has sort of a weird, like, psychedelic undertone. Like, you can almost hear, like, Jimi Hendrix belting this out at Woodstock in a sense. And right out of the gate, you have Beyonce just sort of marching to her own drum. And weirdly, again, we have this mix of being confident, but also being kind of confused. because Beyonce is basically saying, I'm in a bit of a weird place right now, but I'm going to try to break through it the best I can. The hook on this song is the strongest on the entire album. It is very powerful with Beyonce saying, freedom, freedom, I can't lose, freedom, cut me loose, yeah. And it is, again, a very strong performance by her. The beat is fantastic, again, with the guitar and the organ. And Kendrick Lamar. This is, I'm just going to come out and say it, like, I'm not even, like, if I really, like, dived into Kendrick Lamar's, like, entire catalog, both on his own and as, a guest verse on different songs, I might have different opinions, but I'm just going to say it as I know it now. This is his best guest verse on any other song that isn't his. And I'm very much including Really Doe in that. I know that might be a controversial statement, but the flow that he has on this song is absurd. The lyrical stuff, like the little 10-9 countdown thing that he has at the start is really good. And then when he's just saying, pray for me, something for me, just on it, you're just like, your mind is just blown by that. And you're just like, dude. And not only that, but the way he sort of like vocalizes the beat at the end of the song after the final hook is also really, really good. Also, the way this track ends with a sort of title card moment where you have that vocal sample of that woman saying, I was given lemons, but I made lemonade. And then after that, you have the callback to the end of Pray You Catch Me with that, ah. To me, like, this is the track to me that defines this whole album. And surprise, surprise, it's my number one track on the album.
I don't have any other notes to like add. Like it's my third favorite track. So we've arrived. We completed the trilogy here, but yeah, I feel like I would contest that the guest verse on like that like basically sparked the whole like Drake beef from last year. What a beef, by the way. Was a better guest verse, but I caught the countdown effect like you mentioned. For me here, the only thing that I will say though, like I did like. Well, you did expand upon this about like how this is Beyonce basically going through like, hey, enough is enough. Like I don't know if like if I can get through this, but I'm gonna force myself to try. And like she's channeling a lot of her fierce energy that she was throwing down on hurt yourself. Well, don't hurt yourself. Sorry. But like yeah, I like lyrics like I'm telling these tears go and fall away, away. May the last one burn into the flames. Like she's just done being sad here. The chorus is so freaking huge. Like you did an excellent job, like expanding, like basically telling everybody what this track is, and like my thoughts are on it too. Like it's my third favorite track. It's such a solid track.
It's a great track, and again, like if this was just her, like if it was just her, and they put like a little solo or something in there, I might have had it behind 6 Inch or maybe even behind Don't Hurt Yourself. But again, the adding of Kendrick was such a huge move, just to keep up the like. I wouldn't even say just keep up, but also propel and even increase or accelerate the rhythmic flow of the entire song was just a genius move on Beyonce's part. This song slaps like hell, and I am glad that it exists.
So yeah, it almost seems kind of dirty that we have to go away from this song.
I know.
Yeah, like this should have been the ending song. To be honest with you,
I wholeheartedly agree, but at the same time, I understand why the final 2 tracks exist. But we'll get into that.
So I will start out with All Night here, and like one thing that we're probably going to draw a comparison to, like here, like right out of the gate, you get like a nice spring effect to start off the song, and overall, my thoughts about the song, it's it's a very tender song. It's basically like a victory lap for Beyonce and Jay Z to be like, "Hey, we went through this." Mainly Beyonce here because like this whole album was a tale about grief, tale about self doubt, tale about like, "Hey, my love life basically blew up. Like, what's wrong with me?" And her finding like love again with her partner. Like I like that. And also, the opening line in All Night is I found the truth beneath your lies, and true love never has to hide. Like, considering like the opening line we hear on the whole album is dishonesty in your breath. Like, I like that little, like, comparison there. And another thing I kind of liked here, and this might have just been my a little bit of a nerdy thing for me to pick up, the horns that are used in this track, it kind of reminds me of horns that could have been used in a Jay-Z track. More specifically, the song Rock Boys and The Winner Is. Like, I caught that. Maybe I'm kind of stretching that out a bit. But yeah, overall, though, All Night, it's a very much a solid track. And I love how the last line here is how I missed you, my love. Like, and the way that she sings that, delivers that line, it's so tender, man. I love it.
It's a good track, and it does serve as basically the olive branch of this album as far as sort of the conclusion of the Jay-Z Beyonce turmoil of the relationship. The one line that stood out to me on this track was "Our love was stronger than your pride." Whew, that is a line that hits every time. The only thing, though, is while it does have a good beat and Beyonce does sing well and the elements on this track are good, it feels like they're almost out of order in a sense. Like, it feels like it goes from, like, sort of this basic R&B to, like, this almost, like, frenzied trap, hip-hop type of flow thing that Beyonce's trying to do, where she's sort of doing the thing that you mentioned earlier with, like, putting as many words into a flow like she did with Hold Up, the sort of franticness of that. But then on the chorus, it's a lot smoother and tender, and basically Beyonce saying, I'm going to love you all night long. So I thought that was kind of a little bit of a turn off, but not enough to like really knock this album down too much. And again, I agree with you, the way that the track ended with, How I've Missed You, My Love, that basically puts the bow on this frustration that she's been dealing with this whole album.
And what a beautiful moment, man. So you ready to end off the discussion here with Formation?
Yes, ending with Formation. And before I continue, for those of you who may have noticed, my voice is not the strongest on this episode, so I don't know what it is, but it feels like it's going a little bit. So I'm going to power through this last part and then hopefully heal up for the next episode. But Formation is the close of this album, and very much, we've talked about this before. I'm not sure when, but I know we've talked about this before on other albums where I've talked about the consolation track, where because of Beyonce's nature of always being sort of this female empowerment bad bitch that she is, that it feels like for a lot of her listeners listening to not only different moments where she seems vulnerable, but moments where she's branching out into other genres, might be a bit of a, oh, what is this on the album? That this is more or less of a consolation for the fans that have stuck it out throughout this album and wondered what the hell that was. Yeah. So this is more of a traditional like R&B rap track. The first verse is great. So the lines about how, she was, she had a mother from Louisiana and, how it makes a baby Bama. Like that's just a real, like, killer line. And then it shifts from black pride to female superiority or female empowerment. I think this track sounds fine. It's not my favorite track on the album. It's probably on the bottom half for me. And the one thing about this track that will always kind of irritate me is not the track itself or any of the musical elements, but the fact that of all the tracks on the album, we talked about some really great ones, like Don't Hurt Yourself, Freedom, 6 Inch, Hold Up in Your Case, that this was the track that the Grammys decided was going to be the nominee for Record of the Year. In our continuing series in The Grammys Got It Wrong, the Grammys got it wrong. This track is not in the top half of the album, and why it was seen as such a strong pick will always baffle me.
So, yeah, this is yeah, I'm kind of caught off guard by the Grammy talk there.
I know,
because I agree with you after dissecting this record. Like, this is probably like, I want to say this is one of like the bottom tracks for me, but like, it's in that mushy middle, like where the Pittsburgh Steelers are right now, where the what I was going to say the Pittsburgh Penguins are, but they're kind of in the basement. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
But hopefully they turn it around. Anyways, getting back into formation. You know how I mentioned in All Night that little spring effect that kicks that track off? You get that even funkier to kick off formation. So I kind of caught that. That was a cool moment for me. I like the lyrics that you mentioned about like my daddy Alabama, mama Louisiana. So like like it kind of gives way to her heritage again. You didn't mention the Red Lobster line.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the Red Lobster. That is a great set.
Yeah.
The Red Lobster lines.
Yeah, so like
Well, yeah, I left the door open for you, so by all means.
So yeah, it's a fun moment wherever she's like, oh, when he me real good, I take his ass to Red Lobster. Like okay, I'm just imagining like Jay-Z and Beyonce just in Red Lobster, and Jay-Z being like, oh yeah, look at these crab legs.
And then thank you to our Canadian who served us.
Oh man, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
So the chorus is solid here. I like it. It does kind of grind a little bit, where she's basically like, I slay. Again, it's along the same kind of lines as the track Sorry, where this is a very specific track. She did it for a reason. Like you mentioned, it was a consolation track. I'm not going to fault her for doing that. It's just not my cup of tea when it comes to musical appreciation. One thing I did like, though, a lot with this track is that the outro, everything becomes stripped back. And you get the lyrics, you that bitch, when you cause all this conversation, always stay gracious, best revenge is your paper. And like the way that that's produced and the way that Beyonce's delivering those lines, you can feel almost like the journey that we've been on coming to a conclusion. I wouldn't even say it's like on her vocals, but like just like especially within my own investment into the album, because just like, oh, okay, hey, no, this is the end. This is where like the Wizard of Oz ends. This is where like Inception ends. I don't know why I mentioned those two movies, but I digress. Like you can tell like the story's wrapping up in a nice, concise manner. Decent song to end off the album.
It is a decent song to end off the album, and the fact that we have ended off the album can only mean one thing.
We did it, man.
We did it. We drank the lemonade.
What an album, man.
This is definitely an album that honestly deserves as many accolades as it's gone. I think what Apple Music had at number 10 all time on their best music albums list. I think Rolling Stone had it in like their top 25. Like it's one of those that everyone sort of agrees like one of the greatest albums of all time. Are we going to be part of that?
So I'm gonna go first with my overall thoughts and ratings. So what an album from start to finish. Like Beyonce to make such a creative expression of art and human existence with this record is a testament in its own right. You get a wide range of genres that she's able to cover. She's bleeding into the record on par with what Joni Mitchell did with Blue, if I'm going to be honest with you. The collabs here with James Blake, The Weeknd, Jack White are fantastic. I love them. Maybe The Weeknd not so much, but I digress. Like I mentioned with tracks like Sorry and Moments in Formation, some of the songs aren't for me, and I do recognize that. But overall, though, if you're listening to this podcast right now, if you've not listened to Lemonade, do yourself a favor. Like, I would say fans of music deserve to listen to this record. It is such a testament of what, like, what art and what music can be as a whole, and what a how, like, Beyonce as an artist was really able to break out of her own shell and explore different styles. Not gonna rate it a 10 out of 10 because I know I was laying the groundwork for it, but I'm gonna give it a solid 9 out of 10 here.
Yeah, this album is something else. Again, it's not just one of the strongest, most empowered women in the world. So short, showcasing her vulnerable side, but also expanding her range. Again, going into rock, going into like reggaeton, going into country, and doing so in a manner that hits it out of the park every time. Like she makes these tracks into her own style in a sense. And all the while walking that tightrope between confidence and catastrophe. Like going from I'm the strongest woman in the world to I feel like absolutely nothing. It is a strong, strong album. Again, all the features. I like The Weeknd more than you. And of course, Kendrick Lamar just absolutely mesmerizing in his performance. It's definitely a strong album, and I as well am going to give it a 9 out of 10.
So that makes the math really, really easy here.
Really easy.
And for those of you who are following at home, that makes our average rating a 9 out of 10 because we both rated it a 9. Hey,
Hey.
There we go. So for me, when it comes to next album recommendations, I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna keep it easy as apple pie, easy as Sunday morning here. Just go check out her previous record, the self-titled release. It's probably my next to Lemonade. It's my favorite Beyonce album, and that's saying something because Cowboy Carter really landed very hard last year. But it is my favorite Beyonce album outside of Lemonade. So if you check out Lemonade and you want to expand your musical journey from there, check out their stuff. Check out her self-titled release.
I'm going to be a little different. I'm going to go with her first album, which is Dangerously in Love. And I'm going to propose that for two reasons. One, it's an album I've listened to front to back, which counts. And secondly, it will show you the growth between where she started from musically, which granted was a strong start with Crazy in Love, songs like even Me, Myself, and I, or Yes, to what she did on this album. Like you can hear, sort of a pivot from traditional 2003 level R&B to this just absolute cornucopia of styles. So Dangerously in Love would be my recommendation.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've checked out Lemonade by Beyonce and you want to expand your journey from our recommendations, check out the two Beyonce albums that we recommended. So Dangerously in Love, her first studio release, and then my recommendation is her self-titled release, which was her fifth album. So yeah, that wraps up Beyonce's Lemonade here. So one more thing we have to settle up before we kick this review into bed.
Yes, and it is my turn to pick. And again, sorry for the voice. So I'm going to do things a little differently this time. I'm going to give you 2 cities and 2 years. And you have to come up with a combination of the two.
Okay.
So you have to pick a city and a year.
Okay.
But I'll mention the 2 cities and 2 years, so you can pick what you want.
Okay.
The 2 cities are Detroit and San Francisco.
Okay.
And the 2 years are 1969 and 1971. Pick.
San Francisco, 1971.
Yes. It's been a while since I've listened to this album, but I am glad to be given the chance to listen to it again. We are going to be talking about the 1971 album by Sly and the Family Stone called There's a Riot Going On.
Oh, okay. I've never listened to that record.
It's been a while for me, but it's going to be it's going to be an interesting experience.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've not listened to There's a Riot Going On by Sly and the Family Stone, which is their 1971 release, make sure you check out that record before next week's review. That way you can, have opinions about the record and, have opinions about our opinions.
The only thing I will warn you, and I've read it in a couple different publications as sort of a warning, the title track is 0 minutes and 0 seconds.
Wow. That's crazy. Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I can't wait to check that out, man. So.
It's going to be a good one, but I'm going back to Lemonade. I'm glad we reviewed this because, again, I do think it's a really, really, really great album. And do you have any final words about it?
I'm going to leave the listeners with this bit of advice. Always stay gracious. Best revenge is your paper.
I need some water.